Hello, my name is Sarah Betts. I'm an undergraduate freshman at Patrick Henry College, and I'm responding to Greg Lukianoff's video on campus censorship. The key assertion that Greg Lukianoff defends is that free speech is a necessary condition of freedom. This lends itself to the question, what are the necessary conditions of free speech? Ancient Greece is an icon of democracy. It served as a breeding ground for the birth of fresh ideas, the cultivation of new thoughts, and a ready forum for open discussion. The Greeks were hardly stuck on old ideas. They were eager for the new. And yet, surprisingly, they didn't hesitate to ostracize and even kill those that would disrupt the social order and peace with their bad ideas. This is because the Greeks held some truths to be fundamental to social health and good dialogue. They, however welcoming of non-traditional teaching, operated on the assumption that some things are absolutely true and must be held to be true by all participators in discussion. For example, the idea that there ought to be open dialogue and free speech might be considered fundamental to dialogue. One cannot engage in healthy dialogue with another if there are disagreements so fundamental as that. It would be difficult for a war hawk to have a discussion about good battlefield strategies with a pacifist, because the pacifist disagrees with the foundational premise of that discussion. Good discourse depends on both parties speaking the same language. If these fundamentals erode in a society, so will the discourse. Lukianoff asserts that the American discourse has broken down. I absolutely agree. However, I would argue that the quintessential problem is not that colleges have rejected freedom of speech, but that they have rejected the necessary conditions of free speech, the fundamental truths upon which all Americans must agree in order to cultivate dialogue of any depth. If I were to make an attempt at identifying one cause of this, I would suggest that it is the postmodern relativistic paradigm that is being celebrated in academia. Relativism prevents students from being rooted in fundamentals and speaking the same language. For one must be able to identify some things as true and others as untrue to make any progress in discussion. Lukianoff asserts that discourse is broken down because students are not permitted to explore certain ideas and therefore hold them like prejudices. I agree that this is part of the problem. Yet, I'm convinced that American dialogue has not broken down due to any lack of breadth in discussion, but that is broken down due to a lack of depth in discussion. Because when you remove the foundations of common truths, when you bring into question the fundamentals, you're no longer able to explore the deeper issues involved with the subject. And what we find as a substitute for real depth of insight is tastelessness, crudeness, and vulgarity. Because students don't know how to move people by appealing to the intellect, they resort to sensation. And that is where I see American discourse today. It's highly sensationalized, but lacking any real meaning and value. I do agree that college censorship contributes to the problem, but also that there are some appropriate standards and limitations to place on free expression within the college community in the interest of health and unity of that community. Expectations that I'd consider appropriate and not compromising to free speech would be an expectation that discourse occurs in appropriate forums, that is presented in a manner that is tasteful and gives respect to all parties. Anything less is a sorry substitute for depth and effective communication and dialogue. The aim of confining free speech in this way on college campuses would not be to limit the breadth of discussion, but to encourage real depth of discussion.